Hey, this is Mark for Misery Index. I'm here at Right Way Studios today with the man, Steve Wright, the producer of the last Misery Index album, The Killing Gods, which is out this week. Today we're here just talking about gear and doing a gear rundown and how we got general sounds and especially guitar sound on the record. How you doing, Steve?
Good.
Awesome.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're in the proverbial guitar sweet spot.
Yes,
right now.
You're actually sitting in it.
This is it right here.
Yes,
this is the point of resonance.
You sound amazing right now.
Awesome. So this is some of the stuff that we used. This is a EVH 5153 50-watt version of the 100-watt rig. We used a 412 cabinet, and so let's get right down to it. How did you go about micing this rig up?
Well, basically the concept we talked about with the record was, you guys wanted to do something a little different than what was going on in today's metal, what we discussed.
Yeah.
We wanted to do a record with, we approach the drums with minimal editing, more of a comping kind of thing like they used to do back in the analog days. We wanted to approach the guitars not from a processed point of view, so we went, very much straight back to amps, microphones, great preamps, just trying to get a nice pure signal path. So first thing we did for about the first day, which was nice to have that flexibility, is we just tried a whole bunch of different amps. We had about 6 guitar heads in here, 6 cabinets, and we just went back and forth playing different riffs from the record. Just trying out different combinations, what we liked, what we didn't like. And we ended up on this guy, which was very sweet. We pretty much used this for the highs of the record, sort of the crunch of the guitar tone and the beef. And then we felt like we needed something else for the mid-range, so we found an amp combo that we liked with this. And we used the dual amp technique.
Yeah.
2 heads, 2 cabinets.
How do you set that up in the room? Is it flat or?
Well, basically, in combination with finding the right head and cabinet combos, we also moved the actual cabinets around the room to find where they resonate.
The sweet spot.
Into the sweet spot. And that particular place is where all the resonance happened. The big heavy chugs, when it came down to the drop points on the record, every time we needed that big low end, that was the spot where everything combed over on itself. So we decided amps go right there. We tried a whole bunch of different miking techniques and different mic combinations. So again, we had a day and a half to do all this stuff. It was a lot of fun.
I'm only pretending like I don't know about this stuff. This is for you guys.
So, we tried typical mics that have been used all throughout the years, and we went through all the new stuff. Just like everybody, I kind of looked through all the forums and things like that and see what everybody's using and try different things. So this was the time to experiment. We went through and tried all the new mics, all the old mics, and we actually landed on just the old school, typical SM57, regular 57, and a regular 421 on the first amp. And on this particular amp, we ended up with an EV868, which is actually a great bass drum mic. It's got awesome top end, especially when you're recording digital, because it has a very analog top end, in my opinion. And then we used a 421 on this cabinet as well. On the mid-range cabinet, we did an off-axis with the 57 and a direct on-axis with the 421. With this cabinet, we just did straight on, so it was on-axis for both. The other element that we added, we still needed a little more low end with that combination, so we took an S10 subwoofer, reverse wired it, and actually came up with the subwoofer mic, or what everybody, the Yamaha sub-kick mic, I guess people call it now. But we have just traditional speaker cones that we just flipped around, so the old school way. And we use that for all the low end and that 50 hertz scoop that we needed on the guitar. So that was the basic miking technique.
Yeah. How do you configure the cabinets in the room?
Well, the cabinets were actually set side by side, and with just a divider in the center. We just took a gobo and put in between, just so we got a little bit of separation.
Is that made out of it's like wood and?
Yeah, it's just wood covered with paneling, just like felt paneling and stuff like that, just to absorb some of the frequencies going back and forth. And we kept the guitars actually at a pretty low level. They weren't that loud. We noticed that the louder we got with the amps, we started to lose that articulation, started to lose some of the mid-range, so we actually kept the amps at a reasonable level. It wasn't like...
So not overly loud.
They weren't tone 11.
Yeah.
No, they were 5.5. So yeah, kept it pretty quiet.
Yeah.
And we just found that was the best spot.
Do you normally set them just like flat straight on, or you angle them, or
my particular view...
point them directly at each other with one mic in the center?
What I find is I like when amps are lined up in a row and everything's pretty phase aligned. So I can make sure all the microphones are exactly the same distance from the cones. Yes, you get a little phase in between if they're on different cones, but I usually tend to keep everything straight. I keep all exactly identical mic cable lengths so that there's no phasing. There's some people out there that say, oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. In my experience, it does matter. I have exact same cable lengths going throughout the entire signal path.
And just to preface this, we're not talking down on any other forms of recording.
Nope.
We specifically wanted to do this in more of an old school way. Obviously, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So for this, we're using the EVH 5153 coupled with this LTD Phoenix, and on the other side was a ESP-V. Coupled with the second guitar rig was this bad boy right here. This is a special pedal made by the Amp Tweaker company. That's James Brown, the guy that engineered the original 5150. So what's special about this pedal is it has a pre and post gate built into it. So you have nice dead tight stops that you can dial in to your preference. It also has an onboard boost and gain boost as well that's foot switchable, which isn't really applicable in this setting. But this helped out a lot, getting a lot of the crunch and clarity on the other rig.
And you were saying you like that pedal a lot live, right?
I do. Yeah. I like it a lot live. I normally like to stick with the EVH stuff when we can, but when we're doing like fly-ins and stuff like that, where we don't really have control over exactly what we're getting, or it's just not available, this is really great just to run into a tube amp, and it'll get me through a show. So yeah, that's the basic rig rundown. But there's some other stuff on the back end that we'd like to get into when we get into the A room. So once again, Mark, Misery Index. This is Steve Wright, Right Way Studios. We're in his beautiful control room, and we want to talk about some rack stuff that we use to get a guitar sound. So what do we got here, Steve?
So not all this was used, but basically we were talking about...
Everything in the room is used.
We tried. We really tried. So basically we talked about a pure signal path. So we used 5 microphones, 57s, 421s, and the sub kick as we talked about earlier. So I needed something to make it meaty. We wanted to really bring out the mid-range and the tones. So we tried every preamp. We tried a lot of the API stuff. I have some API Neve hybrids. We tried those, a lot of vintage stuff, Neve stuff, but what we ended up on for the main guitar tone was actually a Dan Alexander 1073 knockoff from, I believe, the 70s. It just had a huge low end to it, really nice mid-range, and the high end was bright and crunchy, but not too much. It wasn't that sizzly high end that you get with some amps that it just sounds like a television. So it cleaned up the harmonics a lot. Every time I tried to get away from that preamp, it just didn't sound right. So we kept going back to the Dan Alexander. That was the main portion of the guitar tone.
Is that the passive preamp you're talking
well,
about?
That I'll get to in a second.
Okay.
So the other amp, the second amp, we actually did with the API 512Cs, the newer APIs. We just wanted a cleaner sound for the second amp. So those were that. Now, we have an SSL here at Right Way Studios, but I didn't want to run the amp, the microphones and preamps through the SSL to combine the tracks because I feel like it gives it an SSL sound, and I didn't want that. So what we decided to use was a passive mixer. So we used the SM Pro Audio passive mixer. With a passive mixer, you need to make up the gain stage on the back end. So basically to turn it up, it's a passive mixer. It's pure signal path, very clean, very rich tones. But again, you do have to amplify the signal at the end. So the final color in the entire guitar tone was I ran it through a Calrec 1161 mic pre, which is what they made back in the 70s to kind of compete with Neve preamps. It's really rich, soft mid-range, awesome high-end, and a really nice, tight low-end. So that basically became the final color to the guitar tone.
That's what gives it the punch and the
That's
clarity right there.
the mid-range and the punch and all that stuff came from the cowrick. And anytime I tried to use anything else, it just didn't work. So the cowrick was it. It was the final piece of the puzzle.
Cool. Well, I think that'll do it. Thanks, Steve. I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time. I know
Absolutely.
you're working off the clock right now. Misery Index: The Killing Gods is out this week, May 23rd in Europe, and I think the 27th in the United States. So keep an eye out for that. We'll see you at Maryland Death Fest.